Hi, I'm Vicky. Welcome back to my channel. In this new series, which is going to be a two-part series, I'm going to be making a Valentine's inspired dress. In this part, I'm going to show you how I make the bone bodice for a strapless dress. And then in the second part, I'll show you how I'm going to add the skirt and the petticoat and how I'm going to do the embellishments. I had this pretty heart fabric in my stash. I bought it in Spotlight a year or two ago. It's really soft and drapey and pretty. And I bought loads of it. I think there's about 5 meters of it here. So I thought I would design something using this fabric, and I want to try and use only stuff that I've got in my stash so I don't have to buy anything. I've got so much stuff here, it's just ridiculous. This is the design I'm going to make. I don't have a lot of time, so I've had to keep it fairly simple. So I'm going to make just a simple strapless dress using the heart fabric. I've got some red Duchess satin that I'm going to line the bodice with. I've got some cream Duchess satin that I'm going to use for the outside of the bodice underneath this because it's quite thin. And I'm also going to line the skirt with that. I found a red petticoat in one of my boxes. It's not the right red, but it's going to be kind of hidden underneath, so I don't think that matters. Plus, like I said, I don't want to buy anything. I just want to use what I've already got. Then to decorate it, I had all sorts of roses and leaves and red flowers in my flower stash. Again, it's huge. I need to do a full flower dress and use some of it up. I've got so much stuff here. It's just stupid, really. I've got loads of rose leaves as well. When I've used roses on dresses and costumes in the past and I haven't needed the leaves, I've just kept all of the leaves. So I've got hundreds of those. So I also found some other greenery and bits and pieces in my stash, so I might use some of those too. And of course it's going to be sparkly, so I've got loads of cyan red and I've got loads of golden shadow rhinestones, and I did a little test on my heart fabric to see how it looks, and it's really pretty, so I'm going to bling it up as well. How much sparkle goes on depends on how much time I've got. I'm going to sparkle the roses too. So here's all my materials. I'm going to be making this in exactly the same way as I made the strapless dress that I did the full tutorial for. So I'm not going to go into all the details here. You can go back and watch those 2 videos. I'll link them in the description and above. So if you want more details on exactly what I'm doing to make this dress, you can go and watch those. To make the bodice, I've taken my bodice pattern in a size 10 and I've just made a quick toile of it. I haven't worried about boning or anything, but I just want to make it a little lower at the front and a little lower at the back. So I've just popped it on the mannequin and drawn where I want that to finish. I can then use my pattern to cut all of the lining pieces out of the red Duchess satin, which I'm going to interface. Then for the outside layer, I'm going to cut one set of pieces out of the cream Duchess satin, which I'm also going to interface. And then I'm going to baste the heart fabric on top of this. I've cut all my skirt pieces from the cream satin. And I've also cut all my bodice pieces. So this is the outside that will have the heart fabric over the top. And then the red is my lining. And both the cream and the red have been interfaced. Next, I'm going to cut my skirt pieces from the heart fabric. Because this is a one-way fabric, the print is only one direction, so I need to cut everything up the same way to make sure the hearts are facing the right direction. Because my skirt pieces are triangular, that means there's going to be quite a lot of waste as I fit them on. Once I've cut the skirt out, I'm going to use all the waist pieces to then baste onto the satin for the outside of the dress to try and minimise how much waste I'm creating here. But unfortunately, with one-directional fabrics like prints that are only one direction or with velvet, there is always going to be more waste than there is with 2-directional fabrics where you can put your pieces up either way. Luckily I've bought loads of this and I will keep all the little bits because I'll probably use them for a project in the future. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I cut my pieces out to leave as little waste as possible. That's all I've got left, apart from a couple of tiny scraps that have gone in the bin. So what I did was I cut my first 2 pieces down the side like that, both in the same direction. And then because this side was on the fold of the fabric, this is the selvage edge, I could then cut these pieces, lay them on top of each other right sides together with the hearts the right way up, and I could fit another piece there. So I managed to cut 6 pieces out of that rather than having these staggered like I had in the first video. And then I cut my front just on a single layer so you can see if that was cut out double layer, then I had that left over, which used all that to cut 6 pieces, and then my 7th piece was there, which left quite a small amount of waste really. So I'm pleased with how that worked out, but obviously it depends on the size of your pattern pieces. I did film it, but I completely forgot to press record. That's why I'm drawing it for you now instead. Sorry about that. So now I'm going to take my offcuts and I'm going to start basting them onto the cream outside layer of my dress. So I've got this right side down on the table, and I can just see the hearts through it, so I can make sure it's lined up where I want it to be. That looks good. That's my dogs having a fight, guys. Guys. Ivy, what are you doing? Leave your sister alone. Come on, in your own bed. In your own bed. This is Ivy. She's 6 months old and she's just chaos all of the time, apart from when she's asleep. And this is her big sister Willow, who's 2. Willow's very calm, very gentle, and Ivy just wants to be with her all the time, so Willow gets a bit annoyed sometimes, so I'm going to try and separate them when that starts. So they are Taboodles. They're half Tibetan Spaniel, half Poodle, and they are really sweet little dogs. But yeah, Ivy's definitely a baby. She's still a puppy, aren't you, darling? So they hang out with me on the sofa when I'm sewing, unless I'm working on a big dress for a client that's on the floor. They hang out on the sofa with me. Ivy, in your bed. Come on, in your bed. Good girl. Ivy always wants whatever Willow's got. That's the problem here. I think they're going to have to go outside and let some of this energy out. I thought they were ready for a sleep, but they're not, so you're going to let some energy out outside, bub? Alright, I've put Ivy outside so she can run off some of that puppy energy and give Willow a break so she can have a sleep. So, is that better, darling? Is she annoying you? Alright, back to sewing, and you can get some sleep and some peace and quiet for a minute, okay? Okay, where were we? So, I've got my heart fabric right side down and I've got my cream bodice piece right side down, and I can just see the hearts through it, so I've lined them up. I'm just going to put a few pins in because the heart fabric is really slippery. And now I'm just going to use a thread just to baste around the edge to hold these layers together, and then I'm going to sew them as one layer when I put them together. I'm going to keep basting all the way around the edge, then I'll cut the heart fabric out, and I'm going to do that with all of my cream bodice pieces. I've got the heart fabric basted onto all of my outside bodice pieces, and I've actually got very little left over, actually, just a few small pieces, other than the sort of bits that were too small that I've thrown away. That's all I've got left, so I'll hang on to them for future use. Now I've got everything cut out, I'm going to join my outside bodice pieces, my inside bodice pieces, and I'm going to add the boning, and then I'm going to join my skirt lining and my skirt outside fabric, but I'm not going to join the skirts to the bodices yet. I've got all of my pieces joined together, so this is the bodice lining. I've added my hanging loops and my brand label and size label as I sewed it, and then I've boned it on the inside. So again, if you want to see how I do this in detail, go and watch my 2-part videos on how to make a strapless dress. Then that's our outside layer of the bodice joined and pressed, and I've got the skirt lining and the outside of the skirt joined together and pressed as well. So next I can start joining everything together, and I'm going to start by joining along the top of the 2 bodice pieces. To join the bodice, I'm just popping these pieces right side together, and I'm going to pin all the way along the top, matching my seams. So I'm going to finish pinning all the way along the top, then I'm going to stitch it with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and I'm just going to be really careful that I don't stretch out any of these parts, because the front, actually all of the pieces now where I've cut it lower at the back, these are all actually on the bias, so I'm going to be really careful not to stretch it as I sew it. Once it's sewn, I'm going to trim away a lot of the excess, clip my curves, and then I'm going to open it and understitch along the lining. I've stitched the lining and outside of my bodice together. I've clipped a lot of my curves and taken off a lot of the excess fabric at the top as well. Once it was joined, I've then understitched. Understitching is when you top stitch your lining and you use it to hold back your seam allowance. So you're stitching along here, but you're making sure all of your seam allowance goes towards that lining as you sew it. And the point of this is that it helps hold the lining down on the inside. It gives you a much neater turn at the top than if you don't understitch. So now this is joined, I'm going to press along the top just to get a nice crisp edge at the top, and then I'm going to join my 2 layers together at the bottom. Because of the way this turns over at the top and there's just that little bit of the outside fabric going to the inside, that means that the outside of the bodice is then just a fraction shorter than the lining because that extra fabric's at the top there. So when I stitch this together, you're going to see just a few mil of the lining fabric at the bottom. So I'm going to stitch all the way along, and I'm going to stop just past the seams at the back because I still need to be able to get into the zip. I've done it this way because this is a different method than what I showed in the strapless dress videos. In that one, I put the skirts on before I joined the tops together, before I join the inside and outside. So this is how to do it, with joining your bodice first and then adding your skirts. With the strapless dress video, I left it so you could easily get inside to do alterations. That was why I didn't join the bodice together, but I'm not so worried about that for this. And I find that this method, because this is stitched down, it means the bodice stays really, really smooth. So with the other one where it's separate, the bodice can lift up and down a little bit, unless you put some stitches through, but this one, it holds it down and keeps it really smooth. Here's the bodice pressed and with the bottom joined. I put it on the mannequin, and this top layer was just slightly loose at the front. It was just a little bit baggy. So all I've done is I've just gently pulled it down and done some hand stitching just to hold it into place, and that's made the front really smooth. So here's how it looks on the inside. You can see it's really neat along the top. It's pressed up really nicely, and I've just sewn some bust cups in just to make it fit better on my mannequin. And here is how our bodice is looking on the mannequin. It's sitting, yeah, really smoothly. You can see where I've just pulled that little bit down here. It's just sat nice and smooth at the front now. I'm very happy with how this is coming together. So that's it for part 1. In part 2, I'm going to show you how I join the skirt and the petticoat onto the bodice, how I put the zip in, and then I'll show you how I'm going to embellish it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.